Well, Julie, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. I was so looking forward to this, Arlena.
I know, me too, for many reasons, because you have been my coach since 2019. Is that right? We
Yeah.
went through the coaching program together, you and a couple of other ladies, and I have continued to stay in touch. But I was like, it was so funny because you and I, when we started chatting outside of class, we were like, oh, maybe we should trade some coaching and, help each other out. And it quickly became all about me, which I appreciate. And you're so lovely to offer that. And so working with you has been hugely helpful to me, both in business and personally. Help they kind of go together. You've been helping me sort out some of the priorities that I had, and just issues, the fears that come up when you're trying to run your own business. And I just appreciate you so much. You really do have a talent for this. So thank you so
Oh,
much from the
thank
bottom of my
you.
heart.
Oh, that's really sweet, Arlena. I love it. I really, really do. Coaching is fabulous to see in front of your eyes from a coaching session to the next how much people change, how much they learn, how much they evolve. It's a thrill.
It is, right? Yeah. It's
Yeah.
very rewarding work, but it's important that you work with somebody who has an intuition about it, and you definitely have the gift. So thank you for all your support in my craziness.
Oh,
Love you.
my pleasure. It's fun.
Well, listen, let's talk a little bit about, not just your coaching practice, but I want to get your story. Everybody has a story of recovery. You definitely have one. You've come a long way. You've overcome a lot of challenges. And so I thought it would be great for us to talk a little bit about, why are we here? How did we get here? What was your story? And then we'll talk a little bit about some really important, I like to do the resources like offer some help. So we're going to talk about sobriety and ADHD, which I think a lot of people in recovery struggle with. I personally struggle with ADHD. I've had it obviously my whole life. But it'll be really interesting to hear your take on it as it relates to sobriety and recovery. And we're going to talk about the messy middle. the,
Yeah.
the middle part, middle age, and transitions, and all that. But why don't we just start? I'll let you just have the floor, and you can just tell your story as much or as little as you like.
Wonderful. You know what? Talking about the messy middle, I had a freaking tsunami happen at midlife. And yeah, a complete breakdown, awakening, call it what you want. And by the way, my accent, if you're kind of curious, is French and Spanish. Okay.
That is
Um,
amazing.
so I made a lot of realizations through healing at that part, but going back to my childhood, you know what, wasn't an easy one. We were moving around a lot, so I was never able to really get my roots down. And I had a volatile father, so it wasn't a beautiful part of my life where I could get stability, security, and grow the way that I should have. So thankfully, when I got to high school, we stopped moving. So I was able to make friends and start going out. And in my culture, I'm from Montreal, Canada, just like your culture, everything revolved around alcohol. Activities were drinking activities, going out to drink and dance. And so the objective of life was to get hammered, to get drunk, and to just be silly and laugh, which now looking back is kind of sad. But I it took me a long time and getting sober later in life. So at the beginning part of my life, drinking wasn't really problematic. Looking back, now that, you know, I had my breakdown, just to give you, some perspective timeline, about 4 years ago. I was off of work for a while, and that's when during my healing process, that's when I realized that I was HSP, highly sensitive. And if you don't know what that's all about, it's a researcher from Harvard. Her name is Elaine Aron, and she wrote a book called The Highly Sensitive Person. It's a personality trait, and there's a bunch of tests online that go with the book. It's about 25 questions to know, your level of tolerance to sound, to light, to being scared, so it's very easy to be able to tell if you're highly sensitive, but normally people kind of know, right? So I was a highly sensitive child without knowing. There wasn't a name for it then. And I also had ADHD, which we didn't know about at that time. So I was kind of spacey as a little girl. I wasn't doing wonderful in school. I would say I was an okay student, chatterbox. And and then high school, regular student, wasn't really motivated. It took me actually really wanting to know what I want to do in life to start to do great at school. And that happened actually in university. I did my first undergrad in communications. And when I finished, well, two things. I didn't think I was pretty or thin enough to be on the media, kind of chickened out. And on the other hand, I thought I was too young to start to work from the get-go, to start my career. So in Canada, we're lucky, there are tons of scholarships and possibilities. So I won a scholarship to go teach French in England. So moving on my own, both feet in gravel, and then learning how to be with myself and become an adult. I was 24 at that time, and that really changed my life, opened my perspective. And at that time, people weren't traveling that much, like friends around me. It was very middle class, living in an apartment with a single mom. You get the picture, and people asking me, but why? Why do you want to do that? You're going to eat strange food in a different country. And I was like, yeah, but there was something, drawing me to that. So I went, loved it, didn't want to come back. But the living conditions in the UK, if you're not rich, you're really poor, right?
Really?
You just have heating. So in the UK, the price of a room in a shared apartment is the same price of a whole apartment in Canada. Just to give you, yeah. So thought I would go back and make sure that I got a great education, great job. Didn't end up going back. And as I continued, while I was there, I really fell in love with teaching. I think that's always been a part of me. So, you know what? Drunken story. Sorry about that. I was in the Canary Islands with my friend Marie. And because we didn't have enough money from the UK to come back to Canada for the holidays. So in the UK, the weather's so bad that they have cheap holidays in the Spanish islands all the time, right? So at that time, I think it was for $70. We got the flight and a room, I think half board in a cheap hotel, right? It was fantastic. So one night, sunset on the beach on long chairs. And I asked Marie, I said, and I was a bit drunk, I said, what am I going to do with my life? And she said, well, you love Spanish. You love to teach Spanish. And you know what? Quiet moment on the beach. And I was like, yeah, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And you know what? It was that simple, but at the same time, it was the right thing. So I went back to school and I started to study Hispanic studies. And then I won another scholarship to go do my master's in teaching in Spain in a prestigious university. And you know, as I go through my story, and when I think about it, I think, addictive personalities, it was a part of me. I'd had a troubled relationship with food, obesity, um, and also being anorexic in university, and also like on the eco side, winning scholarships. And it was a high, prestigious universities, being accepted, winning scholarship, that became my thing, one of my highs. And to this day, I still, when during the pandemic, there were tons of free courses, right? In
Yeah.
At Stanford, at Yale. So I love that kind of thing. That's my jam. And just like you, looking back on everything, neuroscience, but just like you, so my thing. Going to live in Spain. I met my husband right before I left, of course, left on the flight, crying the whole time. But I had invested too much, and it turned out that we started a long distance relationship, and it was at the beginning of internet and email. So I kept my emails on a floppy disks, and I had
Oh
no
my
idea.
God.
When you plugged it in, I'm not going to make the sound that they like. So yeah, so we fell in love that way. And when I finished my teaching practice at the end of the year, he came to meet me. We started to live together. And even though, people told me, you know what, teaching a language that's not yours, is not, you're never going to have tenure. You're never, because that's what I was going
Oh,
to do after
right.
teach Spanish in college and university. So, but sure enough, as I came back, when I'm motivated to do something, it normally works out. And I work hard also. So it worked out, and I always had a job in college and university. It took me a while to get tenure, which I did. And then, couples life, of course, from my childhood, I hadn't had a good example of either loving myself or
Mhm.
either functioning in a healthy relationship. So it wasn't always easy, of course.
Mhm.
And but I was really, really on the professional side, super happy teaching.
Mhm.
It was my thing. And my favorite part of it was actually the personal contact.
Mhm.
So in university or in college, I was often the contact with student services to help students go and get help, because quite often they're so shy, they're so embarrassed, they don't want to make an appointment to see the psychologist.
Mm.
So that's
Yeah.
part of it I like the most. So I enjoyed it really, but without knowing, because my cognitive function, my attention muscle from studying so much was so strong, I never knew I had ADHD. But there were still signs. I need to sleep a lot at night. And
Mm.
life is a lot for me, just like normal life, working full time, having a house. And then in my late 30s, I had my daughter,
Mhm.
which is a blessing, which was um, wonderful. It was a difficult, difficult birth. I'm lucky to
Mm.
be here.
Wow.
But then with all those elements together, life got to be too much. Working full time, the commute, the family life, all of it was too much. So for years and years, at night, I would think, I need to stop. I need to stop for 6 months.
Just stop working
Just
or?
stop working. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was
And
thinking maybe it was stop drink. Were
mhm.
you drinking at this time?
Well, actually, after I had my daughter and I had to keep on working, and yeah, the reality of full-time work and parenting and everything, that is when I got addicted to alcohol.
Mm.
I always I drank happily, I drank fast, and lightweight in the sense of highly sensitive, one drink would really get me like really soft and not care too much. So I would have two, three, tops half a bottle, but then it got to be daily. So I was, I
Mm,
think, your classic gray area drinker that when
okay.
I would tell people, I think I have a problem, they would say, no, you don't drink that much.
I think it's so crazy that people will
I
say that.
know. And but to me, I think I don't know what it feels like, okay, to drink 40 ounces of Jack Daniels. But to me, being sensitive,
Mhm.
just the two, three glasses of wine or half bottle, or maybe more sometimes on the weekends with friends, was like killer hangover,
Yeah.
waking up sweaty at 3 in the
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to stop working so much, but
Mm,
I couldn't bring myself to love myself
mhm.
enough to actually
Right.
acknowledge it or to say it to my husband.
Did your husband ever say anything to you about your drinking? Did he ever express concern or anything like
No,
that?
actually, no, but about he saw that I wasn't well, but I was so at that point already in such a bad shape that I couldn't even recognize it. I'd gone
Oh,
numb.
right.
So so that led to 1 year, the year before I broke down. You know
Mhm.
how sometimes you ignore the signs and the signs
Oh,
get
yeah.
clearer, like Oprah
Get
says,
louder and
the
louder.
brick and then the brick wall. Yeah.
Yes.
So I waited, Arlena. I waited and waited until it was loud and clear.
You got the brick wall.
It kind of snowballed. What can I tell you? So we were in California. We took our daughter for to go to Disney before she was too old
Mm.
in Disneyland. Had a beautiful time, but even then wasn't all there. And I got a crazy flu. And that's when I really broke down when they were in Venice Beach. And I said to my husband, I can't take any more. I'm going to ask for a leave of absence. And it was so hard to do, Arlena, because we in Canada, same as the States, it's not well received, not well
Mm.
seen to be unwell and ask, although we pay for our insurance for disability to actually go on it. And I was trying to talk myself into not stopping. And thankfully, I did. I got my gift because for years I'd wanted to stop drinking at 3 o'clock at night when I
Mm.
was hot and not feeling well. I thought, I'm not going to drink tomorrow. But 5 o'clock rolled in, and you know the rest of the story. It really didn't matter at 5 anymore.
Right.
So the gift that I got was vertigo. So I got such bad vertigo that I couldn't drink anymore. I couldn't take caffeine anymore, even sugar, everything that was a stimulant. My brain was kind of fried and just like I was holding on to walls and having
Wow.
really bad nauseous spells and spins. So I spent, I would say, a year and a half in treatment. It took me a long time to get diagnosed to PTSD, to what had happened at
Oh,
work.
okay.
And
So
yeah.
you were ultimately diagnosed with PTSD,
Mhm.
and that was contributing to your vertigo and everything else?
Well, everything, I think, in all honesty, there were different contributing factors.
Mhm.
But what happened is that I was healing a little bit from the burnout, getting a bit more energy, but I lost my cognitive functions.
Right.
So I could hard, and I still to this day stutter a little bit, will make
Oh,
a small mistake. Um, so I pretty much lost the ability to speak. I couldn't
wow.
make a coherent sentence. I couldn't tell a joke. And I'm a super extrovert and I love to kid around and everything. it wouldn't work anymore.
Wow.
So because of that, that's when, and I had to advocate for myself. I have a fabulous doctor, but to say, you know what? I would like to do some more tests. There's something going on there. So
Mm.
that's when I was diagnosed with PTSD
Oh,
and ADHD. They
oh
found
my
out at the same
goodness.
time.
Let me ask you something. How did the drinking, where was drinking, the role of drinking in all this?
The role of drinking and all this, I'm going to find out after, because once I got to be sober,
Uh-huh.
that's when I realized that it was the one key to
Mm.
everything. I wasn't
Oh,
able to heal anything before that. But
wow.
in my, day-to-day life, I, wash, rinse, repeat, would have a glass of wine, wouldn't care about anything else, and then would have, would go soft and I would feel it in my hands and feet. And after I'll realize, the gift of sobriety, one of the best ones will go back. There were many, but to be able to tuck your child in at night
Mm.
lovingly, patiently, not wanting to just go hide and lie down and just be present and smell her hair and take my time. That is the best gift.
It's so interesting. I was thinking this morning about the sort of mommy wine culture. We see a lot of, I'm on social media a lot for work, and I see women making fun or making light of their own drinking, right? You see all these Instagram reels about
Mm-hmm.
women, and they're making fun of, how much they drink. And then they're sort of like embracing, there's all these accounts like boozy bitches, and, there's this. But I was thinking to myself, what is it about, when do women start to recognize, I'm irritable with my baby, I'm not present when I put them to bed at night? It's those are the things that I think become problematic. When did you began to realize that these were problems for you and you really wanted to quit
Well,
drinking?
yeah. And when we studied recovery coaching,
Hmm.
it was what I thought at the beginning was going to be to help others was really to find out, to learn about my own addiction.
Right.
And we find out that it normally takes about 6 years, right? For people from the time they realize it's problematic to actually
Mhm.
start to do something about it. So
6 years.
yeah, so for a long time, I knew it was, but in the eyes of society, in the government, the amount of units that you could drink, I wasn't a problematic drinker,
Yeah.
you
You know
know?
what's funny is there is no like US
I
recommended daily
know.
allowance for alcohol. There isn't
Mm.
one.
Yeah, in Canada, they say, well, it's kind of all changing now,
Yeah.
but at the
Yeah.
time, and even from people, it's like as if you're an alien if you don't drink. And
Yes,
if
I'm
I'm
familiar.
completely honest, when I was drinking, I thought people who didn't drink, like there must be really something wrong with them. Not normal or very, very boring individuals.
All right, all right. We are so
But
boring.
yeah, but no, but that's the thing, to
I
get
know.
back to what you're saying, it's frustrating
Yeah.
because all people talk about is when you have your first or second glass, the release. I'll admit, for
Mm,
these 20 minutes, it's beautiful. You feel
yeah.
relaxed, but at what price? The rest. People
Yeah.
don't talk
No.
about the hangovers, the not being present for your kids, and
It
to be
doesn't stop.
argumentative and
Yeah, it doesn't stop after 20 minutes. Like it never did for me. I never drank for just
mm-mm,
20 minutes. And then I was like, oh, I have this nice buzz going. I think I'll stop. No, for me, it was like the switch was flipped and it was
mhm.
like more.
I wasn't sure if it was going to be for good. I
Mm.
would say instinctively I did, but rationally I wanted to drink still. So I quit drinking. And of course, since I wasn't even able to walk or read or lost the ability to speak, I was, you see me in the corner of my sofa. The corner of the sectional by myself with vertigo. I did it by myself.
Oh my
The
God.
only thing I could do, because I thought my life had gotten to be such, um, how could I say this, a disaster, that I started to write ideas to write a book, a memoir. So I had a little journal and I wrote ideas and I started to listen to podcasts and recovery podcasts, because reading or watching TV with my eyes and like going cross-eyed
Oh.
and everything didn't even work. And the key ingredient of me starting to heal was getting rid of the alcohol. And then I was able to start to peel the layers of the onion, right? And to go on a, how do you say that, a treasure hunt,
Yeah.
to who I am and to
Oh.
being healthy, and realize how all that happened, my difficult childhood and living with ADHD, and like life is costly for me, just, surviving. And yes, it's been quite a journey since then, but without stopping drinking, it wouldn't have been possible. So as I was healing, took me a long time, I kind of became open to the possibility of changing careers, even though, they say the prison of tenure. When you're tenured, you're stuck, you never get out, and you don't want to go back. But I'd almost lost my tenure, so it wasn't that much that worth that much anymore. So I decided to, and thankfully, Arlena, I had two bachelors, one in communications, one in
Oh my
Hispanic
goodness.
studies, and I had a master's in teaching. So, it's not a bad way to start a new career. They're useful things. So,
Absolutely.
so I decided I'm a teacher. I'm always going to be one, but I want to serve. I want to help people feel better. And I got it rough on the mental health side, and also the midlife crisis aspect. I kind of mastered, I think. So I took classes, compassion cultivation at Stanford, and the science of well-being, and workplace mental health leadership. And it started to take shape that I would become an organizational trainer and speaker for mental health, well-being, and human skills, and a coach, recovery coach, to help people who are, especially women, in the
Yeah.
messy middle of midlife, because there's so much going on at that time. It's a difficult part of life, with having small kids, sometimes aging parents, divorced, career changes,
Menopause.
menopause. Oh, and while I was on the sofa, Arlena, I prayed to have menopause at the same time, to be
You're
fucking
just
done
like
with everything.
I
And it
I uh,
didn't,
I
didn't come.
understand. It didn't come.
It didn't come.
Well, one thing at a time. No, that's a lot. And I really appreciate you sharing your story. I mean, so the mental health aspect, it's like a lot of people don't really talk about it, especially in the corporate
Mhm.
world or in the professional world, especially as a teacher, when you're supposed to be the person that has their act together, because you have to sort of be on this elevated position to help others. Tell me, how did having ADHD affect you in your day-to-day life, especially as a teacher?
Mm. I think that regular life just had a higher price for me.
Mm,
So I thought I was somebody who needed more sleep than most. I need to
mm,
sleep 9 hours. So I think that's one of the biggest clues, to function adequately. I I've always needed to sleep a lot.
Okay, so 9 hours of sleep. What else? You mentioned a couple of other things that indicated that you might have ADHD. What are some of the signs that you experienced?
You know what? When people don't know, I would say one of the hardest things now that I talk more to women or people who have ADHD, getting ready for a trip or a
Mm.
weekend at the cottage, getting everything you need in the bags from different rooms in your house,
Oh
to
my
make
goodness.
a list and all the food you need to bring at the cottage, the grocery list. And that is almost impossible to
Mm.
do. You know, these are kind of little signs when there are too many things to do. But, you know, bear in mind that before my breakdown, my muscle was so strong, I didn't really feel that I had ADHD so much. I felt like more of a wuss than people maybe in my family, or having more needs, or needing to
Mm.
rest more, or unable to juggle as much as other people. That was my perception. But then when I broke down, it actually exacerbated the ADHD, like a flare up, let's
Mhm.
say, that was uncontrollable. I couldn't organize. Like in the morning,
Mm.
cooking an egg, toast, and a
Mhm.
cup of tea was way, way too much.
Oh, wow.
I had to go through a whole healing process on that side. And I think looking back, the relationship also with addiction,
Mhm.
that of course having a drink feels good because
Yeah.
it quieted everything.
Have you read anything by Gabor Mate?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
he
love
talks a lot.
him.
I know he's
Mhm.
amazing. He does talk a lot about ADHD and addiction. You know,
Yeah,
ADHD is like in your nervous system and it's there from birth and it never
yeah.
goes away. And a lot of people with addiction issues, um, some of the underlying causes is related to
Mhm.
ADHD, making a lot of mistakes, being forgetful, being paralyzed by stress. That was another a big thing for me when I was growing up. My mom called me scatterbrained. That was like
Mhm.
her little. So how is it like today when you're coaching other women who have ADHD? How do you work with women what kind of tools do you give them to help them manage this?
I use a framework from Harvard, from cognitive behavior therapy, to I'm not a therapist, but it's very practical. So, ways to prioritize and organize.
Prioritize and organize. I love
Prior-
that.
Prioritize and
This sounds
organize.
familiar from some of the things that you've helped me with.
And then uh, to take baby steps, fragmentation. Because, of course, we do with ADHD suffer from stress and overwhelm, right?
Overwhelm. Oh my gosh. Such life
Mhm.
feels like a
So
reoccurring
we
thing.
drive in overwhelming speed, I think.
Yeah.
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 So to do that, but at the same time, to to be kind to ourselves and understanding, and to what was a revelation and that I talk as much as I can about is adaptive thinking. Adaptive thinking is to give the appropriate amount of time, importance, and space to a situation or an event, and not more. So, going on a bender because somebody looks at you funny at work, and you keep thinking about it, you ruminate. And by the way, rumination, I found out recently, is a thing in neuroscience. It's called
Yeah.
frontostriatal loop. It's a frontostriatal loop that when you're caught, and that loop, of course, is never anything positive.
That kind of rumination
Yeah.
feels to me like distraction. And for
Mhm.
me, it's always a sign that there's something else going on, that it's easier for my brain to latch onto something that's insignificant or negative. But that process is about, distracting myself from my actual pain. Right. It's a
Mhm.
sign. So when I just have learned to recognize, oh, when I have that rumination going on, something else is going on and it's time to go a little deeper. And then it's time to call Julie.
Yes. But
Julie, I'm
you
lazy.
are but we need other people, and that's why coaching
We
is so
do.
beautiful, because from the exterior, having perspective is so helpful, and to be able to help people and say, they're not seeing this, but I'm able to, and offer it in a way that's benevolent and that's
Mhm.
helpful.
Yeah, very familiar. I love that Viktor Frankl quote. That was from his Man's Search for Meaning,
I
I
think so,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, such a good book.
Mm,
Um, I just think it's so interesting how when we get sober and we start implementing these tools and we get the right support, that we begin to experience a new normal, right?
yeah.
That place of, rumination is becomes a sign that, oh, I like, it's a signal that more self-care is needed. And I love what you said about the fact that we need other people for the objective perspective. It's been my experience that when I'm emotional about something, it does color my perspective and I just can't see clearly. And that's such a good way of explaining why we need each other, why it's good to have a coach, a support system. And I mean, I feel like we're so high maintenance, we could use a whole team of people.
But you know what? I It's part of it. And don't get me wrong, Arlena, it's not going to be perfect. And my life is not perfect. And sometimes I have shitty days when I just want to roll up in a ball. But if you compare it to before, like the percentage of feeling better is
Mhm.
through the roof. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And going back to community, we're both part of a wonderful, wonderful
Mm.
healing community called She Recovers, where we get to give. And by giving to them, we receive more than anything. And it's the most beautiful, non-judgmental, supportive community.
Yeah, no, I've had both Don and Taryn on the podcast, and I
They're
love
wonderful.
I know they're so wonderful, and I love the idea that everybody is recovering from something. I mean, let's face it,
Mhm.
life is hard. Everybody has experienced trauma on one level or the other, and I just love the openness and the just the love and support. That really, you know what it is? It's like validation. It's like, I see you,
Yeah.
I hear you, you're not alone, you matter. Those are like the overall tenants. And it's like, no wonder there's like some 400,000 women now in the She
Mhm.
Recovers community. It's a very large community. And I wanted to take you back a little bit to the messy middle. Those of us who are in midlife, there is a lot of responsibility. Like you said, we're raising kids. Maybe there's menopause, maybe not. We're in transition. Maybe what used to work for us no longer works. Aging parents. It is a lot going on. So, what are some of the tools that you use or that you suggest to the women that you work with
Mhm.
when they're sort of in the middle of the storm?
Well, I think the most important thing, and I want to share something with you. While I was healing, I listened to podcasts, and one that I liked a lot was The Good Life Project with
Mm.
Jonathan Fields. And he had a guest. His name is Chip Conley. Chip Conley is was a rich hotelier, and then he went um, to work to help the guys from Airbnb start their business. He was 52 and he was a dinosaur. So he really started his life work around ageism. So he decided to leave the hotel business and start the Modern Elder Academy, which is a
Yes.
wisdom school for people in midlife and beyond. And when we talked on the podcast, Arlena, of course, from my sofa, I was like, I need to go there. I need to go there
Did you
and
go?
learn. I went.
You
It's in
did.
Baja. It's in Baja, California. And that's where I started to learn about everything that happened to me, make sense of
Mm.
it, and realize, when you talk about tools, to know that there's a scientific U curve of happiness. And
Wow.
at midlife, especially between 47, 49, you're at your lowest on the
Really?
happiness scale.
47 to 49, people are at their
Yeah.
lowest.
And then going after you turn 50, it goes back up. And when as you age, people normally get much happier, more comfortable. So
Mm.
quite often you're at the bottom of that
In your late
because of so
40s.
many
Yeah.
factors. So just to understand that, to accept it, and then to acknowledge everything that's going on. You know, when you're coaching, quite often we go back to the strengths, we go back to the values and think people at that age quite often have stopped knowing themselves. They still hold on to the person they were when they were in their 20s before they had kids. And
Mhm.
as you get older and you have more life experience, you change, you slowly detach still
Yeah.
from your parents, from the schemes of education, saying my parents did it that way, but I don't want to raise my child that way.
Yeah.
So in midlife, getting to know yourself again,
Mm.
reevaluating who am I now, and what do I want? Because quite often life has become insipid. You've lost your taste for life, like your satisfaction capital is really
Yeah.
low.
There's so much work to be done. And I think,
Mhm.
that idea that all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It's like, absolutely.
Yes,
And there's so much work to be done in midlife. And I'm so glad that you brought up Chip Connolly. He was actually, I had bookmarked is it the Modern Elderly Academy?
Modern Elder Academy.
Modern Elder Academy. I had actually bookmarked that after listening to an interview that he did with Tim Ferriss.
Exactly. Yeah, I heard that interview.
Oh,
That's
did
after
you?
I
Yeah.
went, and his book is Wisdom at Work.
Wisdom at Work. Okay.
Yeah, and he
I'll have to
wants,
check that out.
it's very noble. He wants to change ageism in the
Yeah,
workplace, in
ageism.
diversity and inclusion. People are ageist.
Oh my gosh. I got to tell you, I left Silicon Valley. I left Silicon Valley in I'm still in my early 50s, but I think I was like 51. Yeah, I was 51 when I left. And
Mm.
I was a dinosaur in Silicon
Mhm.
Valley. As an inside sales rep, I was working with a guy that was like half my age. He was like the field rep. I was the inside rep. I was like, I don't want to travel anymore. I don't want to do any of that anymore. And
Mhm.
man, it's that ageism. I felt it in my 40s.
But yeah, and it's so refreshing. His take is that in midlife, because of life expectancy, we're about
Mhm.
halfway through our lives, and
Yeah.
it's not as if I love that term. I'm reading a book about ageism, about aging. I'm trying to look at the title, anyways.
You
I'll
can send
find
it to
it
me later
after. I
later and
think
I'll yeah.
I think it's how to be a boss at aging, and she talks about people like women having cauliflower hair. Do you see it? When in your late 40s,
Cauliflower.
you were old
Yeah.
already, and it's not true
Have you
anymore.
ever seen that
We
picture
can
of J Lo and the lady from the Golden Girls? I think her
No.
name was Blanche.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with the Golden Girls, Blanche
Mhm.
they're all old, but
Yep.
Blanche was like the quote unquote sexy one. She
Uh-huh.
was on
She was.
So it was so funny because J-Lo, there was a picture of J-Lo and she was like swinging on a pole in this crazy suit, like at the halftime, the Super Bowl halftime
Mhm.
show. She's the same age as Blanche was on that show.
But that's the
So
thing.
different. Yeah.
It's so important to look at it. We're not old anymore.
No.
And by changing your life and by redefining your purpose, and quite often at midlife, it means changing your careers or changing something in your relationship, it's a time of storms, of big
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
But by doing that, you have so many beautiful years. And
Yeah.
that's what I try to do,
I got to tell
to
you,
inspire people to make the
yeah.
changes.
Yeah, and I totally resonate with everything that you said because I felt like I was living a double life because somewhere along the line, my values changed. I used to be very money driven and want to provide for my family and do, make the money and achieve and all that stuff. And somewhere along the line, my values started to change. I was like, God did not put me on this planet to sell network security software to the enterprise
Mhm.
level. It just did not feel like it was purpose driven work. And it was a painful place to be because I did not feel I was being my authentic self. My values had changed. And it was very difficult to go through that messy middle where I had to um, you know, change who I had to reckon with who I had evolved into, for lack of a better term. I
Mhm.
had completely changed.
Yeah, it takes time to take a step back. And I remember when I was at the Modern Elder Academy, and it's beautiful. It's like walking into Architectural Digest.
Oh,
It's
nice.
amazing. And to realize that it's a really rough time of life,
Hmm.
and that I really wanted to help people, especially women, in that transitions. And how, like, if I can give you a metaphor, it's to be swimming in the ocean, but the shore that you've left is too far to go back, and you
Mm.
don't yet see the other shore. So you have to
Exactly.
rely on faith, on
Yeah.
your sense of self-love, and saying, I deserve to be happy, and I deserve to have a life that belongs to me, in which I thrive and help
Where we're
others.
authentic. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's a very challenging time. And I think it's so important to have somebody, a coach, somebody like you that can help you sort of stay focused on your true north. You were also there to remind me when I hit my goals, right? Because there was one day you
yes,
were like, do you realize you hit your financial goal that you set a year ago? And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even realize it. And maybe I realized it and just like quickly skipped over it. And you were like, no, no, we need to go back and celebrate that. That's a big deal. So
it
it's nice to
is.
have sort of
Oh,
somebody that was like kind of the record keeper and the truth teller during that time when my head was telling me all kinds of crazy things.
yeah, there's that also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Change is not comfortable.
Not
Mhm.
comfortable, not easy, but I am so glad that we have so many resources and that times are changing and people really are prioritizing their mental health. And to have somebody like you to say your mental health is important and you are worthy of living an authentic life and living within values that maybe have shifted, and that's all okay. It's a beautiful
Yes,
thing.
and to realize, one of my objectives is prevention for mental health, but to
Right.
normalize a lot of us, whoever thought even before the pandemic that they compare themselves to normal people don't exist. We all have
There's no
mental
such
health
thing.
struggles. They're
No such
unicorns.
thing as
They
normal.
don't exist. No, so, and we're all suffering. We've all been,
Yeah.
going through periods of
Unprecedented
chronic,
times.
yes,
Yeah.
chronic stress. We've all been
Chronic
living in
stress.
a state of chronic stress.
Yeah. Yeah. It's challenging times. Well, I'm so glad that there's tools and people like you to help people like me apply those tools and have um, a change in my experience. I just want to say thanks again. It's been so helpful to have you in my life as a guide and a support. And tell me, I know you did a lot of work on your website and people are
Mm.
able to reach out to you. What's the best way for people to learn more about you, the work you do, and how to get a hold of you?
You can reach me on my website at julie@juliebloom.world. And on Instagram, juliebloom.world. And I think Facebook is the same.
Well, listen, my friend, thank you so much for joining me today and telling your story and sharing some tools. I think there's a lot of women out there who need some help with their midlife transitions and ADHD support and recovery coaching. It all kind of goes together. So thanks so
Thank
much for joining me.
you.
I look forward to speaking with you again real soon.
Oh, thanks, Arlena. Thank you so much. That was fun.
That was fun.